on, every voice we sing. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you. I'm calling back the heart of worship. It's all about you. It's all about you. I'm sorry, Lord, the thing I've made. It's all about you. It's all about you. I'm coming back to the heart of worship. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, the thing I made. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. Oh, it's all about you. Oh, it's all about If we can, just lift our hands to heaven. If that's a cry of your heart tonight. One more time, let's sing that chorus. Coming back. I'm coming back to the heart of worship. And it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, the thing I've made. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus.
King of my heart, be the shadow in my heart, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is mine. And lift it up. You are good. You are good. the wind inside my sails, the anger in the waves. Oh, He's my song, and the King of mine. Be the fire inside my days, the echo of my days. Oh, He is my song. Let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, He is mine. Please hear my song, God. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, He is my song, and You are good. You're good. Oh, You are good. You're good all the time. Oh, You are good. You're good, Jesus. Oh, You are good. You're good.
You're never gonna let me down. Come on. Oh, you're never gonna let me down. I know that you're never gonna let me down. 'Cause I've seen it in my life. Lord, come on, we say, you're never gonna let me down. Oh, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me You're so good. So we can trust you right now, right here. We can trust you with tomorrow. We know your plans are good for us. We know your way is better. We know your way is better every time. That's why we call you our Lord. Oh, that's why we call you our Lord. So we say, shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. You believe that your way is better. Oh, shake up the ground of all my tradition, break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. I believe that your way is better. Come on, we say, the ground of all my temptation. Break down the walls of all my religion. Always better, your way was always better. We'll shake up the ground of all my temptation. Break down the walls, we surrender. Always better. To do whatever you want to, I'll make room to do whatever you want to. I will make room for you, my Lord Jesus. To do whatever you want to. One more time, we're gonna sing that. Do whatever you want to. I will make room for you. You are my attention, Lord. Come do whatever you want to. Come do whatever you want to. And I will make room for you. Come do whatever you want to. Come do whatever you want to. Lord.
God, that's the posture of our heart tonight, that we would be able to just surrender our complete heart, our complete lives to you, so that you can do whatever it is you need to do in our lives. Lord, I pray that as we receive your word tonight, as we continue worshiping through your word, you would help us to declutter all of the things that don't need to be in our heart, all of the relationships, all of the habits and addictions, God. Whatever it is that is distracting us, whatever it is that could be cluttering up our lives, Lord, I pray that tonight would be a night at camp, night 2, that we would put a stake in the ground and we would say, God, your way is better for me, not my ways. Your way is the narrow way, but it's the better way, Lord. Thank you that you call us to higher because you love us. Thank you that You don't promise us perfection in our lives, but you promise us your presence, and you promise us to be near us, Jesus. We love you so much. We give you our attention fully, because tonight is about you and you alone, Lord. I pray that we would just continue singing what we just sang in our hearts, that you would just have your way. You would make the room. It's all for you, Jesus. We love you. In your name we pray this. Amen. Yes, please be seated.
Middle school, how we doing tonight? Y'all good? Hey, I'm excited to be with you guys at camp. I want to ask a question to start off tonight. Who in here has got a friend that absolutely does over-the-top crazy stuff all the time? They take it like 10 steps further when they're dared to do something. And you can point at them. I'm totally fine with you pointing at them. I want to know. Okay, so here's the deal, right? I had a lot of friends that were like that growing up, which was a terrible influence on me. But when I went to college, most people think, like, when you go to college, like, you kind of give up the stuff that you did when you were in, like, middle school and even high school and stuff. And, like, for a while we did, and we get to college. And one night, there's, like, a group of 10 of us, and we're like, man, what if we just go ding-dong ditching tonight? Now, I'm going to go ahead and just preface this by saying I do not at all think that it's right to ding-dong ditch, and it's not a good thing. You should not do it. I'm telling you the truth. Don't do it. But we decided to go do it, and so we're like, okay, haven't done it in a while now. This is like 2024, so I don't even know if that's still a thing, really. Oh, it is? Okay, great. So anyway, we go and we ding-dong ditch, and here's what's crazy, okay? We picked the biggest neighborhood in Murfreesboro that you can, like, ding-dong ditch. We're like, okay, this is over the top, this is crazy, but this is going to be great. And we had a friend with us, and his name was Justin. And Justin had the nickname, his nickname was Danger Justin. Danger Justin, literally. Like, people at work called him Danger Justin. People at our church called him Danger Justin. Like, Justin was just kind of known as the friend that would always take things over the top. Like, he's the type of dude, if you ever go to a lake, like, he'll jump off of a cliff, and he just doesn't really care. He's not going to ask how deep the water is. He's just going to assume that it's deep enough for him to jump off into. And so we take Justin ding-dong ditching with us, and we're ding-dong ditching. We're doing our thing, how it goes, whatever. And so we come to a certain point where Justin just takes off running towards his house. And what we were trying to tell him, no, we've already done that one, Justin. Don't go do it. We've already ding-dong ditched it. No, don't go do that. And so Justin takes off in a sprint. As soon as he goes to the door, homeowner opens the door right when he gets to the step. He hadn't even knocked on the door yet. And so Justin just takes off running. We scramble out of there. We look like ants running on pavement, like we're running out of there. And so we literally get to a certain point in the neighborhood, and we just hear groups of cop lights and cop sirens. And this neighborhood was really big. So mind you, like, we didn't really know where we parked at because we all took, like, different cars. And so we're walking around. We're at this point, we're running. We're trying to just figure out, like, okay, where are we at? And so we're, like, running in this tree line, and there's, like, train tracks, and then above us there's this road. And so we're, like, running, and we see cop lights getting closer. And cop lights are getting closer, and then there's this train that starts going by. And so we've got Danger Justin with us. And so Justin decides, I'm not going to get caught. I'm going to jump on a moving train. And so this joker jumped on this moving train and takes off, and we just stopped. Like, we didn't really know what to do. Justin just jumped on the train. We, like, freaked out and stopped, and we're just like, Justin! Like, we're freaking out. We don't really know what to do. And so the cop lights kept going by. Apparently they missed us or whatever, and we're like, what are we going to do? And so Justin didn't even know where this train is going to go. He just gets on a moving train because he's like, I don't want to get caught. So we get back to our car, and we're like, guys, we got to figure out where he's at. And so we pull up one of our apps that we use for social media, and we found him. He's in Nashville. He took the train all the way to Nashville. got to Nashville pretty quick. Train was moving fast. And so we're like, all right, we got to go get him. And so we go get Danger Justin. And we get down there and we're like, Justin, like, what are you doing, bro? Like, what made you think about jumping on a moving train? He's like, listen, guys. He's like, I love you guys. He's like, I don't want to get caught and go to jail. So I just figured y'all could get caught and I'm getting out of here. We're like, okay, thanks, bro. Like, appreciate it. And so I remember telling Justin after this, I'm like, listen, bro, like anytime we do something like this, you always take things over the top. Like, why do you always have to do the most? And he's just like, dude, he's like, you got to have fun in life. He's like, right? He's like, you got to have fun in life. He's like, we're young, we're in college. He's like, you've got to have fun. And I was like, yeah, but I was like, you got to think about things for just a second, man. Like, you're getting a little bit older now. Like, you're in college. Like, you're an adult. But what are you doing in regard to, like, hey, bro, think about the long term for a second. And he's just like, it doesn't matter. He's like, here's the thing. He's like, you guys don't know this. And by the way, Justin would like never open up about his life to us, ever. He's like, here's what you guys don't know. He's like, man, he's like, my parents don't ever care about where I'm at. He's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, friends are constantly rejecting me. He's like, it doesn't really matter what I'm living for anyway. He's like, I just want to have fun on earth. And I was like, yeah, bro. But I was like, wait a second. I was like, you just said, like, you don't care about what your life looks like one day. Did I hear you correctly? He's like, yeah, that's right. And I was like, so you don't really care about leaving a legacy behind one day? He's like, not at all. He's like, my parents never did that for me. And so I started thinking about that a little bit more, and it made me think about how many of us would actually say that we wake up every single day with a legacy mindset. Like when you wake up as a middle school student, not many of y'all, you wake up as a middle school student, you are thinking about your legacy one day. Not many of us. Not many of us at all, because a lot of times what we say, and I said the same thing, is like, hey, I'm going to think about that later in life. It doesn't really apply to me right now, right? Like we think about that for maybe we hear it in a sermon or we hear from our friends. We're just like, it doesn't matter. I want to have as much fun as I can. But how many of us would actually say that we think about a legacy that we're leaving behind? And I don't know if you know this or not, middle school, but the way that you are living your life, whether it's positive or negative, the direction you're leading people, you are leaving a legacy for someone. Like your life is reflecting a legacy. Like one day, people are going to know you for something. And so the question I want you to think about tonight is this. What is the foundation that your legacy is built on? What does it mean for you as a middle school student to live with a legacy mindset? First thing I want you to think about, I want you to write this down tonight if you're taking notes, but this is going to be the main point. Is faith the foundation of your legacy? Is faith the foundation of your legacy? Here's what we know about leaving a legacy, right? Like if you leave a legacy behind, like it means that like people are going to talk about a certain area of your life a lot. Like whenever you leave Earth one day, like people are going to know your life for something. And the reality is that a legacy that outlives you, that influences others for the kingdom of God, is only a legacy that is built on faith. So is faith the foundation of your legacy? Turn with me if you have a Bible. If you don't, we'll get you one. But Hebrews 11:1. If you don't have a Bible, we've got some Bibles in the back. We'll pass some of those out. We want to make sure you get a physical copy of God's Word. Something we do at Long Hollow, if you're maybe new to Long Hollow, is we always say word when we're there. So you can say word when you're there. Hebrews 11, verse 1. And this is where we're going to be camped out tonight. We're going to be in chapter 11. It's going to also be up on the screen. It says this. Now, faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen. Faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen. A simple way to think about faith is you can say that faith equals confidence in the trustworthiness of God. Faith equals confidence in the trustworthiness of God. See, here's the thing. Faith is what enables you to live with confidence, which is going to bring us to the first truth that we're going to see tonight is that number one, by faith, we can live with confidence. By faith, we can live with confidence. Now, here's the reality. The reality is when we put our faith in something, it always adjusts how we live, right? We put our faith in a lot of things. Now, for some of us, some of you have your faith in Tennessee sports that this is Tennessee's year to finally win a championship. Like, the draft picks worked out. Like, all this stuff is finally working out, right? Like, this is Tennessee's year. I hear it all the time. I'm a Kentucky boy, so we're not even going to have that discussion. We won't. Doesn't matter. It's okay. I'm in enemy territory. Some of you have faith that this school year, you're going to get all your classes with your friends. Like, yep. Some of you are like, yep. 6th graders think you are. 8th graders are like, no, you're not going to do it. Some of you have faith that your parents are going to start giving you or keep giving you their credit card for V-Bucks. I already know some of y'all that do. I mean, some of the skins y'all showed me, I'm like, you ain't got no job. Where you getting that money? Or some of you have faith that the bedtime that you know you have and you're afraid of admitting that you have isn't going to have to happen this school year. The bedtime that you have isn't going to have to happen this school year. You're finally going to be old enough. You know you have a bedtime. Some of y'all do. Some of y'all don't. That's okay. But I know some of y'all do. I've talked to your parents. The reality, though, either way, here's what happens when we put our faith in something. See, when we put our faith in something, it's always going to adjust how we live. It's going to adjust how we talk to people, right? Like, I've talked to people that for a lot of people that put their faith in sports, they will always, and they're so certain on things, like always be so sure about their team. They'll always be so sure about something. Or I've talked to people that for them, they put their faith in friends and like their entire social life is lived around like what they're going to do with their friends. When you put your faith in something, it's always going to impact how you live with confidence. Now, the reality, though, is a lot of us, we put our things in things of the world, right? Or at least we tell ourselves we do. How many in here, you like hot food? You're being honest, you like hot food. So now I'm just going to tell you right now, I didn't bring the super hot stuff, but these are Jim's. These are really good. I tell myself I like hot food. If you catch me around a group of people that enjoy hot food, I'm probably going to try to eat it. But every time I try to eat it, I'm trying to change the outcome of what's going to happen. And that's me sweating like I just ran a marathon and having to drink like a lot of milk. Like I can't eat hot food. But I tell myself every time, I'm like, no, this time's going to be different. Like, this time's going to be different. I'm going to eat hot food and stuff. And so for some, some of y'all like Cheetos and stuff. Who in here likes hot Cheetos? You like hot Cheetos? You want these? Hey, will you eat it? You got to wait till after service. Deal? Okay. I'll save these two for after. So what I always do is I always try to think like, okay, this is going to be a different outcome than it was. I'm going to eat this food. It's not going to be that hot. If I keep doing it, it'll get better, right? If I keep eating this hot food, it's not going to be as bad as it was. But what happens every single time? I'm sitting there, all my friends are loving it, and like my face is red. I'm sweating like I just ran a marathon. They're like, "Are you okay? You look like you're about to like pass out. Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "I'm fine. It's just a little bit hot in here." Really, it's just the temperature of hot Cheetos that get to me. I'm sensitive. I know some of y'all can eat really hot foods. I can't, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. But here's the reality. The reality is a lot of times we put our faith in things of the world and we expect different outcomes. Middle school, what happens a lot of times is maybe you've put your faith in your friends, and then whenever you're let down, when you hear about somebody that's talked behind your back, you just look for a new group of friends. Or maybe whenever you get that screen time that you've wanted so bad when you get home from school, it just doesn't leave you satisfied. You start to ask your mom and dad for more and more screen time. Because you've put your faith in something of this world to satisfy a desire that you have. And here's what you're going to realize if you haven't already, is that the world was never meant for us to put our faith in. See, the world for you as a middle school student, is as tempting as it can be because it's so accessible, was never meant for you to put your faith in, because it's always going to leave you wanting more. See, anytime that we put our faith in the world or what people say about us, what people think about us, what we're doing is that we are making a transaction that leaves us spiritually bankrupt. Every time. Whenever we put our stock and our equity into what people say about us, is what we're doing is we're saying, hey, I'm looking to you to give me purpose and meaning. Like I'm looking to you to write the legacy yourself. Like the legacy that's going to be said about me, like I'm okay with you being the one that comes from. And here's what happens though. What happens is the world, it's just a cycle that continues. We keep wanting more. We keep trying to achieve more. We keep trying to look to more from the world and what people say about us and what the world can give us, only to leave us spiritually bankrupt. See, faith in the world and what it has to offer you is always going to leave you wanting more. It was never designed to satisfy you. But here's what's super cool, middle school. See, a legacy that's built on the foundation of faith is always going to live for more. A legacy that is built on the foundation of faith is always going to think with eternity in your mindset. Look what it says in verse 7. It says this. It says, by faith, Noah, after he was warned about what was not yet seen and motivated by godly fear, built an ark and to deliver his family. By faith, he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. Verse 8, by faith, Abraham, when he was called, obeyed and set out for a place that he was going to receive as an inheritance. He went out even though he did not know where he was going. Verse 11, skip down. By faith, even Sarah herself, when she was unable to have children, received power to conceive offspring, even though she was past the age, since she considered that the one who had promised was faithful. Verse 13, these all died in faith. All these people died in faith, although they had not received the things that were promised, but they saw them from a distance, greeted them, and confessed that they were foreigners and temporary residents on earth. Verse 14, now those who say such things make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. See, here's the reality, is true, authentic faith is always going to live with an eternal mindset. It means that you're not just going to be focused on what the world can give you today, because you know this isn't your home. It means you recognize that this is not your temporary residence, that it's actually pointless to build up equity and hope here on earth. Why? Because it's going to pass away one day. Earth was never meant to satisfy us. And here's what I believe, middle school. I believe that a lot of times as a middle school student, you are constantly being bombarded by the things of the world and culture, and you're constantly have to fight against what people say about you and look to those things. And the reality is it's a slippery slope, because we get one good compliment, what do? We start to look for others. One thing of the world starts to satisfy us, and that's it. We're like, all right, here we go. Like, I finally found it. This is where my purpose comes from. And the truth is this, is that if it's from the world, then it's never going to satisfy you. If it's offered up from the world, it's never going to leave you feeling complete. So what do we do then? 2 Corinthians 4:18 is a good verse. It says, so we do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. See, here's the reality. A legacy left behind that was built on faith, that was focused on making much of Jesus known, is always going to outlive you. It will always outlive you. Now notice, what I didn't say is I didn't say a story. There's a difference between a story and a legacy. And here's what the difference is. A story, you can write a book and insert some good stories, but where does it end up? It always ends up on a shelf. Legacy does not end up on a shelf. You cannot put a legacy on a shelf. Why? Because you can feel a legacy. You can read good stories. They're great. They always end up on a shelf. But a legacy is never going to be put on a shelf because you feel it. So we're not talking about the story that you leave. What I'm talking about for you as a middle school student tonight is a legacy that you leave behind that people feel generations from now. That's what we're talking about. So is faith the foundation of your legacy? Second truth that we're going to see is that by faith, we can experience freedom. Drop down to verse 24. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, and chose to suffer with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasure of sin. For he considered reproach for the sake of Christ to be greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, since he was looking ahead to the reward. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but Moses had quite the legacy. Okay, this dude, like in Hebrews, they call it the Hall of Faith. Like, he's up there. He'd probably be on the Mount Rushmore of faith. But Moses has quite the resume. I mean, he overcame the odds of being murdered as a baby. He led the Israelites in the desert through all the years of wandering. Oh, and by the way, if that's not enough, he wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. Like, this guy Moses was the dude. Like, he's the original, like, top 5. He's in there for sure. Now, here's what's really interesting about Moses, that Moses refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. And what it resulted in is it resulted in suffering with God's people. Moses chose to reject the riches that he had. Not a lot of people know this or not, but Moses was pretty wealthy. Like, he set high up in Egypt. Like, he had a lot of things. And what happened is that when the Lord called him to go and to lead God's people, like, he was making a decision. Like, he was choosing something. And so when Moses put his faith in the Lord and said, Lord, I'm going to go. And when Moses obeyed, Moses, because of his faith, had freedom to choose. Second truth that you're going to see tonight is by faith, we can experience freedom. Now, here's what's really cool about this story is that Moses knew the consequences it was going to bring. He knew. Moses knew that leaving Egypt, what it was going to cost. It's going to cost something. Like, he was literally rejecting Egypt for the sake of leading God's people. The question I want to ask you tonight, middle school, is where's your Egypt? Where's your Egypt? Where is it that maybe the Lord has been trying to call you from so that you can step into a season of dependency on God? Let me just tell you this, is it's going to cost you. It always will. See, rejecting something on earth and rejecting what's comfortable is always going to cost you something. But I don't know about you, but I would much rather find myself in the will of God than find myself comfortable on earth. It's 2 different things. It's a good place to be when you're in the will of God. It's not always going to be the most comfortable. That's okay. But Moses was like, okay, I'm going to go. And we know the rest. Legacy wrote itself, and it's something we still talk about today. Now, here's what I'm not proposing to you. I'm not proposing perfection. I'm not. What I am proposing to you is that what you choose to put your faith in today is going to impact how you live tomorrow. It always will. The things that you choose to put your faith in today are always going to dictate how you live tomorrow. The principle I want you to see is this, is that faith allows you to experience the freedom to choose. Faith does not equal freedom from pain or suffering in this life. It does not. Building your life on a foundation of faith does not mean that you are not going to experience pain or suffering. A lot of times it means that you will, because you get rejected by the earth. in the world, and that's okay. Here's why I think Moses got it right, I believe, is that when the Lord called him, Moses was aware of the consequences that would come with his decision to leave Egypt. Moses knew. He was aware of the consequences, and he chose faith. Faith isn't believing in spite of evidence. Faith is choosing to obey in spite of consequences. Let me say that again, middle school. Faith isn't believing in spite of evidence. Faith is choosing to obey in spite of consequences. If you are faithfully following Jesus and you choose to build your foundation on faith, then you are always going to face consequences. It's going to happen. I've heard stories before of kids literally walking into school and like living their life for Jesus on display, not just with their words, but with their actions, and literally getting rejected by their friends. That's going to happen. I've heard stories of families and parents treating their kids differently because they live for Jesus. That might happen. But what would it look like to have a generation of middle school students that say, I'm not going to wait to start thinking about a legacy later in life. I'm going to think about it today. Why? Because it matters. See, a legacy isn't something that you just put off. Obedience isn't something that you just delay. So what would it look like individually for you to start to live with a legacy mindset? What would your schools look like? What would your families look like? What would our community look like? What would it look like? Maybe God brought you here to the mountaintop just for you to start thinking about and putting your faith and trust in him and the legacy that you're going to live behind. Have you ever thought that maybe like God brought you here for a purpose? It's not just by happenstance. You didn't just get signed up by accident. Maybe you did, but you're here for a purpose. And so what would it look like for you as a middle school students to start thinking about living a legacy behind? Is faith the foundation of your legacy? You know, as we get to the end of Hebrews, verse 32, says this, it says, and what more can I say? I mean, you basically go through all of Hebrews and he's like, all right, so like what more can I say about these people? Time is too short for me to tell you about Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets, who by faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, obtained promises, shut the mouth of lions, quenched the raging fire, escaped the edge of the sword, gained strength in weakness, became mighty in battle, and put foreign armies to flight. Women received their dead, raised to life again. Other people were tortured, not accepting release so that they might gain a better resurrection. Yeah. Verse 36, others experienced mockings and scornings as well as bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawed in two, they died by the sword. They wandered about in sheepskin and goatskin, destitute, afflicted, mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. I literally read that verse and I'm sitting there thinking about, wow. It says in the Bible, the world was not worthy of them. Like these are people that literally chose to build their life on faith. There was everything for them. Like they realized the consequences that it was going to bring. Like there was people that literally said that were sawed in two for living a life by faith. And it says that the world was not worthy of them. Here's what I hope. I hope so bad that one day, generations from now, that there's legacies that we feel from you guys as a generation, that there's people that are like, man, the world was not worthy of them. Like the way that he or she lives his or her life, like the world was not worthy of them. Like something about when you're with that person, like you can just tell that they always live for more. They're never just content with where they are right now. They're always going to live for more and try to make much of Jesus known because they realize this isn't their home. They want to leave a legacy behind that reaches other people. See, I don't buy into, I hear this a lot. I don't buy into the media garbage that says like this generation doesn't have hope. Like all the statistics that come out, and like I read that and I see it. Like we read all these things that come out about this generation. That's great. It's useful. But here's the reality is that I don't think that that's what your identity is. Like I really do believe that God is going to use this generation for something remarkable. I do. I believe that. I have hope in that. Like I believe that there's literally people in here. There's going to be people that are in churches, but there's going to be people that are in schools, that are doctors, that are in their workplace, that are living faithfully for the glory of God, that are going to leave a legacy behind that's talked about generations from now. That there's literally some of you right now that God has already been stirring your heart. Maybe there's some of you right now like you're like, I've never even thought about a legacy that God is going to use. The challenge we have this week is we want you to start to think about a legacy. We want you to start to think about what would it look like as a middle school student. That's why we chose to talk about this. Something Chef always tells you guys is that middle school, you're never too young for this. You're not too young for this. Like we don't want to wait to start talking about a legacy because we care about it today. We don't want to wait until you get to a certain point. No, we know that there's middle school students right here that God is raising up to leave legacies behind. But we also know that it comes with cost. See, as great as it sounds, we talk about a legacy, you're like, that's great, but like, what is it going to cost? It's going to cost. It is going to cost you something. It is going to cost you your social status. It might cost you some of your friends. It's going to cost you the people you hang out with. It's going to cost you your comfort. Like it's going to cost you something. And it's going to cost you your life. See, legacies built on faith will always start by costing you your life. You say, Ron, what do you think? So Justin shared this at the beginning, but fast forward a year and a half. Some of my friends, we were talking over like, hey, you know what, Justin, you could just tell like he just never wanted anything to do with church, didn't want anything to do with discussing feelings or emotions. And I always knew that Justin was at the home that he was coming from. There was a lot going on in his home. He had an abusive father. A lot of times his parents would just up and leave him at home, and he had to figure things out himself, and he's constantly living for the approval of others. He was exhausted by doing it. He was tired. And so for him, like any moment he got where he just got to be in the limelight, be the center of attention, like that's what Justin wanted to do. And so my friends and I, we were talking about it, and we were like, man, like this, where's friend? We love him. We care about him. We don't want to just leave. Like, what do we do? And we started to just pray, and we're like, okay, like, let's just start encouraging him through not just our words, but our actions. Your words matter, but your actions matter so much. People watch how you live. They listen to what you say, but they're going to watch how you live. So we just started encouraging Justin. We were like, hey, man, we're just going to get together. Would you come with us and do this? And sometimes he said yes. Other times he said no. And so it mattered to us. So we just started to pray fervently, like all the time. Like I have journals literally that are just full of times our friends got together. We would literally get on our faces and pray for them. And so we started inviting him to stuff, and we started to realize that Justin was opening up a little bit more. But you know, it's funny, whenever you start to pray for somebody, it's crazy how much the Lord starts to work. It's almost like prayer works, right? So we just started to pray all the time. Pray for him. Keep being his friend. Pray for him. Keep being his friend. Keep loving him. And we're sitting there one night. We had our college ministry service, and we get our seats, and we saw Justin walk in. We were like, whoa, like Justin's here. And Justin walks in, and we're like waving him down. We're like, come over here. And he just kind of like waved us off. I'm like, okay, it would be weird to go grab Justin and have him sit with us. But he sat by himself that night. At the end of the night, they get done. Justin kind of walks to the right, walks back, and kind of goes backstage. We're just like, oh boy, what's he about to do? We're getting kind of nervous. So my friends are like, we'll send you back there to check on him. I'm like, great. So I go back there, and he's sitting down, and the dude's just weeping. So I'm sitting there, and like, if I'm ever around somebody that's crying, sometimes I'm like, all right, what do I do? Touch it. What do I do? So I just put my arm around him. I didn't really say anything, but I just put my arm around him, and he just started talking. He's just like, he's like, I feel like he's like, I've wasted 20 years of my life that I'm never going to get back. He's like, I'm okay with that. He's like, I'm okay with that because he's like, what I chose to do tonight is I chose to put my faith in something that's greater than me. And if it took me 20 years of mistakes for this moment, then I'm okay with that. He's like, because I realized, he's like, sometimes I'm embarrassed by like the last name I have. Doesn't mean much, but he's like, it's not about that. He's like, it's about Jesus now. And I literally that night watched this dude that his identity always came from other people, what he did. Literally that night, you could just tell this dude's identity, his focus, everything completely shifted because he had an encounter with Jesus and his life was never the same. Cost him his life. You say, what do you mean by that? Well, here's the thing. See, as humans, there's always going to be two deaths. If we don't have a relationship with Jesus, then there's going to be two deaths. We're going to die a physical death and a spiritual death. But for those of us that have already put our faith and trust in God, there's only going to be one death, it's physical death. But really, we're going to spend eternity with the Lord. That's great. And so a life that chooses a legacy built on faith means that there's going to be you giving up your life. Like you're going to say, like, I'm willing to like surrender my life. John 3:3 says, Jesus answered, I'm telling you the truth. No one can see the kingdom of God without being born again. Romans 5:1, now that we have been put right with God through faith, we have a peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. See, here's what's really cool in middle school. Is that faith isn't something you can obtain or earn or receive by doing better, by trying to be good. It's not something for you that comes by from a certain age. It's not. See, faith was provided to us through the finished work of the cross, Jesus Christ. Here's the gospel. Somebody asked me, what's the gospel? Here's the gospel is that God created us to be in constant fellowship with him. That was always the goal. That was the original design. And when sin entered the world through Adam and Eve, it messed it up for the rest of us. Ever since then, we've always been trying to do things to get back to that unity that we have with God. And we see that all through the Bible. And the Lord didn't just leave us there. He sent his son, Jesus, to die a death that we should have died. His perfect son, blameless, final sacrificial lamb that died a death we should have died. And those that put their faith and trust in him and call upon the name of Jesus will be saved. And then we find ourselves back at original God's design. So here's what I'm going to do. I want to ask tonight, every head bowed, every eye closed. I just want to ask the same question that I started with tonight. Is your faith, is your legacy built on a foundation of faith? I want you to just sit with that for a minute. I want you to just sit and get quiet for a few minutes and just think about that. Maybe you've came to camp, you were signed up, you're just like, hey, listen, I'm here, mom and dad had me come. Like, I didn't really know what this is for, or we're going to do paintball. Still going to always elect to believe that there's a reason you're here. We care about you. We love you. We're glad you're here. But also know that the Lord doesn't want to just leave you where you're at. That there is a purpose that you are here for. And here's what's really cool is that for some of you, maybe you've never even thought about faith. Maybe you've never even thought about like what would it look like for you to leave a legacy behind in faith. And what I want to do is I just want to kind of create a picture as you guys are sitting there. It's just you and the Lord. Nobody else. Not by your friends. Just you and the Lord having a moment. See, I think in Hebrews, it gives us a really good picture of what authentic faith looks like. What it's going to cost us as well. You guys are just there. I just want to read this over you. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob. By faith, Jacob worshiped, leaning on his staff. By faith, Moses led the Israelites. By faith, Moses refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell. By faith, kingdoms were conquered. By faith, promises were obtained. By faith, the fire was quenched. By faith, strength was gained in weakness. By faith, you were blessed. By faith, you can worship. By faith, you can lead others. By faith, the walls can come down in your life. By faith, kingdoms can be conquered. By faith, promises can be obtained. By faith, the fire can be quenched. By faith, strength can be gained in weakness. But by faith, some of you might experience persecution. By faith, you might be mocked. By faith, you might experience bonds and imprisonment. By faith, you might be afflicted. By faith, you might die by the edge of the sword. By faith, you might wander in the desert. By faith, you might be in the valley. By faith, you might not receive everything you pray for on this side of eternity. But by faith, some of you are going to leave a legacy behind that outlives you. So here's what I'm going to do tonight. There's two people in the room I want to speak to tonight. There's people in the room for some of you that maybe have never thought about a relationship with Jesus before. I want to make it crystal clear to you. I said it just a minute ago, but it's not something that you can earn. It's not something that comes from how good you can be or do. You've already messed that up. But here's what I want to call you to tonight. What I want to call you into tonight is the best decision you'll ever make. And that's choosing to put your faith and trust in the Lord. So nobody looking around here. Here's what I want to do. If that's you tonight, if you're like, hey Ryan, like I want to have a relationship with Jesus, like I want that. Nobody looking around. I just want to ask if that's you. Will you just do me a favor? Look up at me if that's you. Just look up at me. Make eye contact and hold me. Best I can see. Just keep looking at me if that's you. Nobody else looking around. This is just a moment between you and the Lord. It's just you and Jesus. Here's what I'm going to have you do. If that's you just looking up at me, what I want to ask you to do is I just want to have you go ahead and stand to your feet. If that's you, just stand to your feet. If that's you, just stand up. Just keep standing. Now, very quietly, here's what I want leaders. If you see one of your kids standing up, here's what I want you to do. I want you to grab one of your kids. You're going to walk out there with some of your leaders. They want to hear what's going on in your life. We have leaders at camp. They're not here because force them to be like they're here because they care about you and they gave up their week for you. So if that's you standing, if you have one of your leaders with you, don't, we'll just ask you to walk right out here, the doors you walked into tonight for worship. Your leader's going to meet you out there. They're going to sit with you. They're going to talk. So you guys can go ahead and walk out. Nobody else looking around, just those that are standing up. If you're still sitting down, still having a moment with you and the Lord. Moving quietly. The rest of y'all that are in here, here's what I want you to look up at. I want to encourage the rest of y'all. There's people right now that are waiting for you, for this generation, to show them how much Jesus means. There's people waiting. Listen, I'm always going to encourage you guys to go and share the gospel. Like, that's always something that I'm going to, like, we hear that in the Great Commission. Like, I want this to be the generation so bad that does not fall for the trap, that they're identified by, and their identity comes from what they do. Like, that's not at all. But what I want this generation to be known for is not just how much they share Jesus, but how much they show Jesus. I was on a train one time a few years ago. It was in Boston, and there was this guy on the train, and he saw the shirt I was wearing that referenced Tennessee, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're in Tennessee." He's like, "That's the Bible Belt. That's where all the Christians are." And he kind of did that. Yeah. He's like, "You know what's interesting?" He said, "There's a lot of people up there that claim to follow Jesus, but he's like, they've just never shown it." He's like, "That's why I struggle to believe it." He's like, "If it's so real to you, how come you never show it through your actions? You'll say it, you'll sing it, but do you show it?" So here's what I want to encourage the rest of you with. I believe you're here for a purpose. I do. God brought you up here to the mountain. I believe that you are here for a purpose. And I believe that Wednesday, when you get on the bus, we feel like we talk about this every year. It's like, you're going to go back down. We want you to live. Here's the reality, though. The reality is that this isn't a go and walk in your schools and have all the answers, because you're not. You're going to realize that when you walk back home and you step back into life below the mountain, is that you don't have all the answers. And that's okay. That's okay. You have permission to not have all the answers. I'm okay with that. Because I realize there's this maturity process, and as you spend more time with Jesus, there's going to be things that you realize that just naturally show by you obeying the Lord. There's going to be places the Lord leads you by just simply obeying Him each and every day. There's going to be people that are put in front of you. There's going to be opportunities you have to not just share, but to show it. To love people unconditionally. As you heard last night. A generation that's not identified by what is said about them, but a generation that's identified by their faith in God and a legacy that's built on faith. So here in a minute, we're going to worship. We're going to sing. I want to pray for you. I believe in you. I know that the Lord's going to do mighty things in this generation. I believe it. So I want to ask that tonight. Let's pray. And then we're going to worship. Jesus, we thank you. God, it feels like there's days where I know we don't come with a lot of faith, Lord, but what we come with, Lord, multiply it. God, I'm thankful that as we seek you, Lord, that a lot of times where we try to have all the answers and we try to put our life together, God, you don't require that. You love us how we are. But God, you always call us to more. And so, Lord, I pray right now, God, for these students that, Lord, that are maybe searching for their purpose, their identity, God, that maybe when they lie in bed at night and they're confused, and they're trying to figure out where they have a place in this world, Lord, but they would see that it's never going to be found in what they do. God, it's found in the finished work of the cross. That, Lord, as we walk in that freedom that we have, as we worship you as the author and the perfecter of our faith, Lord, we find our purpose through you. So, Jesus, I'm thankful. You give us a song to sing. I pray that we wouldn't just sing it, but we would live it. It's in your mighty name I pray. Amen. Let's worship.
We're going to keep it down. We're going to sing with all of our hearts as loud as we can. I just invite you to take whatever posture you need to tonight. If you need to kneel at your seat, this altar is an open space, not to come and just talk and distracting, but a time to meet with the Lord. If you need to pray with a friend, just know that there's freedom here, and the Lord wants to speak to you. So let's sing it. I don't want anything but you. You're more than every dream come true. All of the things I thought I wanted don't come close to me. Now that I'm yours and you are mine, our love is the secret that I find. I'll spend forever in the pleasure I found looking in your eyes. Let's just sing this out. Give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You can have all this world. You can have all this world. More than silver, more than gold. You are the treasure that I hold. Now that I've tasted of your goodness, nothing else will satisfy. Give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You can have all this world. You can have all this world. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. You can have all this world. I just want Jesus. Only you can satisfy. No one else, nothing else. Oh Jesus, this is for you. Across this room, let's lift our hands tonight and declare with everything that I don't want anyone else, just Jesus. Sing, I don't want anyone else. I don't need anything else. You are my one. You are my one. I don't want anyone. Let that be your prayer. I don't need anything else. You are my one. You are my one. Sing, I Thank you.